Have town liaisons with us this evening. We'll let them introduce themselves.
Captain Charles Persons, League Department.
Chris Schregel, Engineering Department Traffic Safety Coordinator.
And one more thing before we go any further. Should an emergency alarm sound in the building this evening, the emergency exits are to my left, your right. Please leave the room and then proceed to the front or rear of the building to the exits. And do not use the elevators if the alarm is sounding. Our first order of business this evening is to review the minutes from the prior meeting. We will go over those if there are any comments, notes, or changes that need to be made. Items based on the order of the sign-in sheet for both old and new business. Once we review all new and old business, we'll then move on to the site plans. As we work through the agenda, we'll first provide background information. Once that's concluded, we'll open it up to public comment period. During the public comment period, those that have signed in for the agenda will be provided 3 minutes. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address. Please be streamed and recorded. As you discuss your item, be aware that each member of this board has copies of all of your correspondence with the town. Therefore, there's no reason to repeat any information you have already stated. Once you hit about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, Greg will ding the bell, and at 3 minutes, he'll give you a double ring to let you know that your time is up. All residents in the room, once all the residents in the room have had their opportunity to speak on the agenda item, the public comment period will close. We'll then open the item open to the board members to take action. During the time, the board will not take answers from those in the audience. Therefore, if you have any questions, we ask that you please ask them while you have your 3 minutes, and we'll do our best to answer those when we open it up to the board discussion. A few topics that'll come up as we go through the comment periods this evening. Just so everyone is aware, this board is required to follow the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, also known as the MUTCD. This is a document issued by the federal government along with a New York State supplement. This document provides uniformity and consistency, allowing road users to know what to expect. This board will not make recommendations that do not align with the MUTCD. The standard speed limit in the town is 30 miles per hour. There are instances where you can reduce the speed to 25 miles per hour. The Village of Williamsville has taken this action outside of school districts, school zones. The town of Amherst has not taken any action to reduce speeds below 30 miles per hour. Reducing below 30 miles per hour does require legal action from the town board to do that. We'll just touch on stop signs real quick. There's no agenda items tonight on them, but just so everyone is aware, stop signs are traffic control devices at an intersection. They are not speed control devices. If you want to learn any more about this, just go to Google and search unwarranted stop signs, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff as to why that is that way. Speed issues as well, speed humps, speed bumps, speed tables. The town does not have any of those in the town. This board is in favor of them. We are in conversation with the Highway Department and Engineering Department on potential pilot projects, but until those are completed, no speed bumps or tables will move forward, but we will take recommendations if you're interested for your street. So with that, we'll move into the agenda for this evening. And our first order item on the agenda is Old Business A, Maynard Drive near Main Street. And I'll turn this table over to Chris for our background on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. This item came to you, I believe, back in November, where residents of Maynard Drive approached the Traffic Safety Board and pointed out that overflow parking was occurring from Sacred Heart on Maynard Drive north of Main Street. And what you have discovered is that this is primarily juniors who do not have a place to park. You were informed that Sacred Heart has made efforts to add parking as well as purchase nearby properties. The biggest issue is they are no longer able to utilize the parking lot to the east. On the screen, you'll see a whole bunch of vehicles parked there. At one time, they had an arrangement, but after a change of tenant, they no longer have that agreement. Therefore, there was overflow parking onto Maynard. The residents complained of difficulty pulling out of their driveways, blocked garbage cans, students encroaching on, within the driveway limits. So when you looked at this, you asked that the engineering department take a further look and provide site distance as well as additional investigation. In your package tonight is that information. Happy to go over that with you right now. Essentially, it is showing that, yes, indeed, there are site distance issues. So we utilized the typical site distance calculations used for a side road. Normally, you don't do this for driveways, but we mimicked as if the driveway was a side road. And what we discovered is essentially, if you were to park, we did this at 36 Maynard. If you were to pull out of that driveway, there is insufficient site distance. Without obstructions, 129. The minimum is 140. And the other direction, minimum 132, when the recommended is 140. But what was more of a concern is that parking was observed all the way up to the Crosby intersection, and that failed even worse. Given the geometry of that intersection, it was fairly difficult to see with those parked vehicles at that intersection when you came off of Crosby as well as turning onto Crosby. Those presented a challenge, and that site distance failed. So I hope you had time to digest that information as provided, and now we'll can open it up to you guys as well as the public.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We will open it up to those in the audience for public comment. Jennifer Dermott.
Good evening. I don't have too much by way of comment, more questions. I guess my first question would be, why would we use what is typically used for a side street for a driveway? I would think that any time you have parking on a street, driveways' views are going to be impacted. I am the head of school at Buffalo Academy of the Sacred Heart. My residency is in North Buffalo, so I'm very, very accustomed to street parking. And I can't imagine that you're ever going to have street parking and not have your views obstructed in some way. I think that's probably why there's regulations for side streets. So I guess that would be my first question. And I think you, in your instructions at the beginning, it said if you have questions to raise them during your time frame. So I guess I need to understand it so that if I need to go back to my families and explain what this means and what impact and how it's impacting safety, I understand it so that I can be a conduit for that.
Okay.
Sure, I can answer that. So simply put, there is no sight distance coming out of driveways. We used what was best available, which is side streets. Is it intended for driveways? No. Like you said, this could be mimicked. Any neighborhood that has a busy on-street parking is likely not going to meet the sight distance criteria identified for side streets. But that was that's again was the only way to perform this sight distance calculation was to utilize it as if it were a side street.
Okay. So as a follow-up comment to that, I would not be in favor of changing anything as it relates to the street parking in light of the fact that it has had street parking, and before Sacred Heart was there had been street parking there. There certainly had been with the Museum of Disabilities, and People Inc. had used that as street parking for a long period of time. That would be my comments at this point.
So just, we asked at the last meeting for those to be done from the driveways as well, because the residents that were in the audience referenced that there was issues seeing outside their driveways. So that was the ask really for that, just to confirm if that was accurate. So that's really all it's doing, is confirming it. And you are exactly right. That would be the expectation, is that the car is parked
That
right
any
there. And it's a common occurrence. It would happen pretty much on every street, but just really wanted to validate how extreme it was with the width of the street and the width of the driveways, how the cars were parked, just to get a better idea for our knowledge if any parking restrictions are put in place.
Right. I also drive the area daily, albeit sometimes I'm there before all the students are there, but rarely I'm in and out throughout the day. I personally have never had issues. My parking spot is at the old museum, so I actually pull out as if it's a driveway. So if, yeah, so there's like 5 or 6 spots right onto Maynard there. Yep, that's where I park every day, every single day. And yes, you're pulling out onto a street, so you're making sure that you can see, and you pull out slowly as you would every single time you would pull out of any residential street where there's street parking. So I think I'm probably getting close to my time. So those are the comments I have. I don't think I have any neighbor here. That I might have neighbors here that I just don't recognize. But if this is of that level of concern, I would have liked to have had some dialogue tonight.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Also for this item, we have Robert Belswenger.
Yes, I have no further comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Also, we have Hoi Zhang. Would you like to speak?
I just have a question.
If you could come up to the mic.
Good evening. So I'm actually a resident of Maynard Drive. So every day, it's not always like that, but I think you mentioned the background pretty well. That because it lost the parking ability to that People Inc. parking lot, that's why it caused the jam of that parking line. So every time when I pull my car out for work, I am become very cautious because I don't want to hit anybody's car, or if the students get coming back from school, I don't want to hit any students or pedestrians. So I think you mentioned Sacred Heart is buying like land to build more parking lot. Is there timing about that when it's going to be built so they can enhance their capacity for parking?
They already installed an additional parking lot. So
Okay.
they had a parking arrangement with the building next door.
Okay.
They have a new tenant at that building, which is Spectrum, or I believe Spectrum acquired the building, one of the two.
Right.
And with that, they lost their parking arrangement to utilize that parking lot. With that, they built a parking lot
Yeah.
on some of their green space on the parcel of property, but there still is a shortage of parking, which is causing the overflow from the school parking on Maynard Drive.
Got it. But once that green lot, which was converted to parking, will the situation get improved?
That's already been built.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So there still is a parking shortage for the
Right.
school because there's no more green space that they have, but they're utilizing the on-street parking on
Got
Maynard.
it. Okay.
Just one last piece of context for you. They also bought the old People Inc. building, the old Eggertsville Hose Company building.
Okay.
So they own that, and they have spots, parking spots on that lot as well.
Oh, great.
Just wanted to complete the context for you.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Charles Greco?
You have an address?
Charles Grieco, I'm a lawyer for the firm of Bonchenick and King. I represent Sacred Heart. Just real briefly, I just wanted to add that I happened to be in the neighborhood today. I was coming back from a meeting I had in the town of Clarence, and shortly after 1 o'clock, I went down Maynard just because I wanted to see what the conditions were. I did take some pictures. There were no cars wrapped around the Crosby Bend at that time, and there were numerous spots in front of the houses on Maynard that didn't have any cars parked in front of them. I don't know, like, not making any representation as to whether today was more or less representative than January 2nd, but I just offer that. Happy to share the pictures I took today from my car for whatever they're worth with the committee if you want them. But it does, at least in my mind, raise the question of whether a single day sample gives an appropriate basis for making conclusions as to what the parking situation is like on a typical day on Maynard, a typical school day. So if you want me to forward the pictures, I'm happy to do that. I've got about 4 of them that I just snapped from
Chris,
inside my car.
yeah, I think we're okay. Yep, based on where this will probably go this evening. Are there any other audience people in the room this evening to speak on this item? Did you want to speak on the item? Sure. And you are?
Address.
And can you just state your address on them for the record?
30 Maynard Drive. Our problem is backing out of our driveway. We have now taken to backing into our driveway because it's a little safer. But it takes 2 of us, one of us watching the street and one of us backing out. My question is, when People Inc. was in the old fire hall building, they had the same problem. We complained about it, and someone, and I'm not even sure who it was, told us that if you have a business or some sort of organization, that you have to have enough parking on your property in order to suffice for the people that you have. And obviously, Sacred Heart does not. We've had several accidents on the street with people backing out of their driveways. And the other problem is parents picking up the kids. They park on the opposite side of the street, and the school bus, if you talk to the school bus driver, who on Monday blew his horn about 5, 6, 7, 8 times to try and get the parents to move out of the way because he couldn't even get down the street. But our biggest concern is that they do park around Crosby. The gentleman may not have seen them that particular day, but every day there are cars, and sometimes close to the fire hydrant too. But they do go up around Crosby, and we've had people complain from Crosby they can't see. Those cars up there on Crosby are actually student cars. Those are not neighborhood cars. We've never had people parking up there on Crosby until this problem has come about. So I don't know what the solution is other than trying to get Sacred Heart to close up some of their parking spots. I think we've discussed in the neighborhood, one of the problems we think is everybody got assigned a parking spot. So some days there's parking spots available. I mean, we've walked through the neighborhood, and there are sometimes parts, and like Jennifer has said that the last time I walked through that there were a lot of sick kids. Well, if there's sick kids, why can't somebody else park in that parking spot? I don't understand why there has to be an assigned parking spot. It might alleviate it a little if people could just park. And also on our street, there are 2 people that work at Sacred Heart that park in front of our house all the time, and they're adults. I've seen them. They're not kids. They must work in maybe the cafeteria or something, because they leave at about 2:15, somewhere around there. So they're not students. They obviously do not have a parking spot. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak this evening on this item? None being heard, we will close the public comment and open it up to the board. And to start off, I will turn it over to Greg, who has more information as well.
Hi, everyone. Greg Dion, Vice Chair of this board. So I'll try to keep this very brief. The main thing that stuck out to me was the visibility of the sight distance for that curve at Crosby. While there was deficiencies on the sight distance for pulling out of the driveways, it didn't seem, it was like 8 degrees and I think it was like 6 degrees. It didn't seem like super deficient, yes, deficient, but it wasn't percentage-wise that big of a deficiency. So I'm a little bit less concerned about that. I do think there are things we can do to change that or to fix that in the short term. But for now, I just wanted to address the Crosby sight distance. So if we can go to the next slide. So just to orient everybody here, we have the Maynard is running east to west here, or not east to west, but left to right. You have Garden Court over on the left. You have Crosby that kind of does the, the weird turn up there. And then north is to the upper left. Next slide. So this is the current conditions where Maynard is not stop controlled. So the sight distance issues are primarily at this bottom stop sign on the bottom, where you pretty much have to creep up way past the stop sign into the actual intersection in order to know that there's no cars coming. So this one looks like the biggest concern that I have. Next slide, Chris. So just for context, there's a car parked on the side of the road. It's a huge, huge swath of asphalt here. Just for anybody who's never driven through this, it's a massive, like you could almost, Sacred Heart could almost build another parking lot in this intersection, joke, but relatively ambiguous and strange intersection for drivers and pedestrians nonetheless. Next slide. So here is kind of my proposal for this, just kind of trying to address this intersection in particular. Essentially, Maynard would remain not stop controlled, and Crosby would remain stop controlled. Chris, you can go to the next slide and we'll kind of zoom in a little bit, so make it a little bit easier for people to see. So right here, this intersection, or this portion in the bottom right, I'm essentially proposing that we create a sort of like island, like a little tiny grass island, and a slip lane going, allowing people to make that turn onto, from Crosby eastbound onto Maynard southbound. And then adding ADA ramps and a sidewalk on that to allow for actual pedestrian accommodations to be placed here. Stop bars and stop signs at both of those, and parking restricted throughout the duration of the island, and then a no entrance or a one-way sign, whatever is more appropriate, on that slip lane on the right. Next slide. The next component is this sort of like little readjustment of the intersection itself to kind of make it feel like more of a real intersection. Again, restricting parking there, and then kind of utilizing an existing concrete pad that extends out to the street in front of that house there, and using it to actually create a ADA ramps to connect to the proposed sidewalk and ramps over on that island. Next slide. And then just to highlight these, essentially adding in ADA ramps at all 4 of these corners here. This intersection is very strange in that it essentially has no pedestrian accommodations. You're kind of just discouraged from crossing in this area at all. It's one of the only, I live in this neighborhood, I walk here all the time, and it's one of the only intersections that has no ADA ramps at all. If you wanted to legally cross and you were in a wheelchair, you would have to either go down to Hendricks down here, or you'd have to go up to Main Street. So just for context for everybody. Next slide, Chris. So here's just the final kind of outline of what I've put together, and obviously this is just meant to spark discussion. And next slide. So my final thoughts, I think it significantly improves the sight distance for the Crosby intersection in particular, which seems to be the most egregious from the analysis that the engineering department and Chris performed. It accommodates the right-hand turns from Crosby eastbound to Maynard southbound. And this intersection is one of the few in the neighborhood with no ADA ramps, even though Maynard and Hendricks has ADA ramps on all legs, and Maynard is not stop controlled at that intersection. So it essentially creates the same pedestrian accommodations that exist one intersection down. And then, this is my wishful thinking, but perhaps Sacred Heart would be willing to pay for the construction of such an improvement. Obviously, that's a long shot, but I figured just as something to put in here, perhaps they would. Because it may help encourage more students to walk to school if they have that, if they have the proper infrastructure in that neighborhood, in essentially the closest neighborhood intersection to their school. It might help encourage more kids to walk to school, or even to park further down on Maynard, where they're essentially, if you were to go further down on Maynard, there's not that many driveways. Essentially, once you get past Garden Court, it's all just kind of one big backlot and no aprons or driveways onto it. So it might encourage more people to walk there if they didn't, and to park further down on Maynard if they didn't have to essentially cross a sea of asphalt to get up north on Maynard. So those are my thoughts. Just some last things beyond this, just to cover them while I'm up here and I have your attention. In general, if we were not, you know, if the board's not in favor of installing something like this, I think a short-term solution would be to restrict parking pretty much between, kind of at that second tree on Maynard from the corner. So if you were to go up, Chris, essentially like, yeah, like right there, like essentially restrict parking around that corner. I think that would solve at least that sight distance issue. And it might cause, you know, more people to either park on one of the other streets if they can't, you know, park on that weird curve. So, you know, that's kind of my short-term and then long-term thoughts on this. And obviously I'm open to hearing what the rest of you guys have to say as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Any other comments from others on the board as we chat?
I like the concept that Greg put out. And regardless of how that pans out under your scenario or under the existing conditions, no parking on that curve. I mean, you wouldn't allow parking under this scenario either. So I think in the short term, immediate term, restricting parking on that curve, I would strongly be supportive of. I understand and I appreciate how difficult it is to back out of these driveways with those parked cars, but you know, I live in this same sort of neighborhood, and there's parked cars near my house, and it's just something that, living in a residential neighborhood in Eggertsville with very narrow lots, you just have to deal with. So I would not necessarily be in supportive of restricting parking anywhere else except for on that curve. And then on your scenario there, I assume that at that stop sign where you have the through movement, there would be would we add a no right turn allowed there since we have that slip ramp?
Yeah, or no left turn, right?
Right.
If you're,
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we can add whatever other appropriate supplemental signage, yeah.
okay. Those are my thoughts.
And just one last thing to clarify your response. Would you be in favor of also restricting the parking essentially up to that second tree on Maynard? Like from the corner, it's kind of a little bit out of view on this picture, but
Yeah, going to the south, I'm not,
like that, essentially that second green dot.
whatever, I mean, this site distance calculation seems to be based on intersection site distance, so I would be in support of that. But applying the intersection site distance to the driveways, I'm not in favor of personally.
Okay, understood. I think we're on the same page.
So there are some other complications on this corner, a fence, vegetation, but if you were to look at the entire triangle, it essentially fails all the way up to that driveway, not that tree. So it's just for discussion, how far do you want to take it? I think that's what Greg is alluding to.
I mean, like you said, there's a fence there anyway, so like essentially the site would be obstructed from the fence.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty high fence.
So how many parking spots did we lose, Greg?
You can probably count them right here. So starting at this fence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But you'd want to, I don't know how far you want to take it around the corner, probably to the stop sign.
But legally, that last car might even be too close to the fire hydrant
Yep.
anyway. I don't know what the regulations are.
Even the stop sign, you're supposed to be, Captain, what is it, 30 feet or 20 feet from a stop sign per VNT?
I believe it's 20 feet.
Okay. So if you did wrap around, you're not allowed to park in an intersection either, so you could potentially start at 20 feet from the intersection and wrap it completely to where, you know, the fence stops the sight distance. Does that answer your question? I can't remember who asked it. Dan, was that you?
Yes. So these 6 parking spots that we lost here on this intersection, now these parkers have to go to other streets. And we never discussed it. Is there plenty of parking available during the week?
no, we're just going to push it to another spot.
They just wouldn't. Yeah, essentially they just wouldn't be parking in that area. My assumption, I don't know for sure, is that they would probably either park on Crosby right there, or maybe they'd go up to that part of Crosby. But that's just a guess.
There's no other schools here. No, we'd be taking a lot of parking.
So, just going, can we go back to Greg's drawing real quick? So if you, on Greg's drawing, across from where he has the ADA landing at the top, across from the no parking, I believe you'd have to restrict parking on the other side there as well.
I think this is already restricted.
It's already
Yeah,
restricted.
east side of the road is already restricted on Maynard.
All the way up to Maynard, to Crosby.
That white car technically is parked illegally, I believe, the white car in the top left of that screenshot.
I thought it ended with that sign. Oh, that sign goes both ways. Okay, I thought that sign was pointing back towards Main Street.
So Dan's point is you relocate the 6 cars, where are they going to go? Is it going to cause a similar undesirable location for parked vehicles?
Personally, I think it's better to not have them sitting in that intersection, even if it means dispersing it a little bit up or down Crosby. I know that the neighbors who live in those houses might not like that answer, but I think it's better than having them sit in that intersection for sure.
We know from Damon that when you restrict parking, people will move to other areas, then we get complaints from the new areas, right?
Yeah, sometimes you have to chase it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Greg on that, though. Yes, you're just going to push it off, but that is just one of the unusual areas of too much concrete. And I think if you can get cars away from that, just because the unusual shape, that's just probably smart. But I agree. Of course, it's going to push it somewhere. You know, magic spaces aren't going to just appear. But yeah.
I'm not sure.
The beauty of voting.
No, we can't vote, but I think we can still make a resolution, we just can't vote on it. So, is there anyone making a resolution at this point for any parking restriction?
Sure. I will make one to install the parking restriction essentially around that curve and up to that first tree, and then for the 20 feet that Captain Person said from the stop sign. Oh,
Just for clarification, it's 20 feet from a crosswalk, I believe, and 30 feet from a stop sign or a traffic signal.
30 feet, you said?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
if
for
there's no crosswalk listed, then it'd probably be 30 feet from the intersection.
then 30 feet.
From the stop sign, yeah.
So 30 feet from the stop sign on Crosby, around the bend to Maynard, to the first tree that's in line with the fence.
Yes, correct.
That stop sign gets relocated, doesn't it?
Not under the current scenario.
Yeah, we're doing like short term, and then I can make the motion for the long term thing too if other people are kind of interested in that.
Do we need a second for that motion that we can't vote on?
I'm just making sure we're clear on what it is right now. So the motion is 30 feet in front of the stop sign, around the bend to the second tree, which is in line with the fence, as Chris is trying to draw here. So is there a second for what is drawn on the map?
I would second that.
So motion by Greg, second by Jen. Any further conversation?
That we table it, right?
So with that, we have a pending resolution that will remain open for the February meeting to vote on for that parking restriction. When it comes to other parking restrictions on the street, I'm not in favor of any additional parking restrictions. Personally, from the opposition that we had from the last meeting that was here, I think we will, or the town board will face opposition to this parking restriction when it goes before them, based on the residents that were at our last meeting on this item. So that would be for the town board to decide on, but I am not in favor of any further parking restrictions on making it at this time. Up to anybody else to comment on that.
I agree.
So then, moving to Greg's design plan. I have no objection to it. I would forward to engineering for a to-scale drawing or recommendation to then forward to highway for budgeting and installation if possible.
Al, what are your thoughts on this? Again, Al's from, a liaison from the highway department.
Well, like I said, if engineering wants to draw something up and send it over, I mean, obviously, this probably would be like a CIP project or something, I would say. But to start the motions, if you want to draw something up and send it over.
Is this something that the highway crews could do themselves, or you don't know, or outside contract?
It's curb, right? Curb,
So we can refer that to, we can refer it to engineering for a drawing, correct, Chris? Or further consideration?
Yes?
And recommend that they work with highway on,
Yeah, you could say, refer to engineering to complete the conceptual drawing, formulate a cost estimate, and submit it in an upcoming capital improvement program for funding.
what Chris just said.
We wouldn't spend time doing a full design until we're funded.
Okay, so exactly what Chris just said, are we?
Yep.
The 5 here in favor? That doesn't need a resolution or vote to refer?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. The question regarding the single day. The single day in this instance for this bend is kind of irrelevant because it's a safety concern of the visibility around the bend. Whether one car is there, 6 cars are there, it's still the safety concern of the sight vision around that bend with cars parked there. So.
And if the day that these photos were taken was an anomaly, then putting in that parking restriction shouldn't impact anybody. And so, but I'm comfortable with that from a safety perspective.
And then there was a question regarding parking requirements and assigns the parking requirements for the building. Tom, is there anything you can add on that? I think we had some reference to this the last time, that there's some grandfathering based on? No? I get confused between projects. That was just-
All right, yeah, so the Sacred Heart site is subject to what we call an alternative parking analysis. Those are prepared by licensed traffic engineers to take a look at how their utilization of the site may be different from what our parking standards require. Those are reviewed and approved by our zoning enforcement officer, Dan Ulatowski. There is one on file for this site. I believe it's 123 spaces or 120 odd spaces that they said were appropriate, and our office agreed. So that's what they are allowed to have on site. The normal parking calc would be slightly higher, but not outrageously higher as to where they'd have an excess of 100 stalls. So this site is subject to it. With all the approvals of the alternative parking analysis, our office, if there is, there are 6 stalls under what we would require. We didn't feel that was, a damning number that would send this site over the brink of a parking issue. The planning department does have authority over all the parking analysis, so if there is continued issues here, we certainly could revisit that with your recommendation. However, at this point, this was approved in, I think, June or July, so it's pretty recent to this past semester.
So with that, I know this is a school, so I'm not sure of how it all works, but I know we've talked about it in other buildings with restricted parking. When you restrict that parking for like a tenant of an apartment tenant versus a restaurant tenant or a retail tenant.
Yeah, so
Is
that's.
there any, with the school restricting the parking to the students and assigning those spots, does that impact anything based on the number of spots that are available?
It does not. So that's all internal programming. It's something that we don't have land use control over. So that's up to the school and how they program their parking.
Okay, I was just checking to see if there were any requirements with the town as that gets assigned, as is done in other spaces since we've talked about that. So, okay.
Chairman, while we have Sacred Heart here, do you have any updates from since the last meeting with any additional conversations to secure parking from adjacent properties? Is there any updates for the minutes?
I was copied on an email that one of the neighbors sent to the facilities. I can't remember honestly if it was Spectrum or if it was Benchmark. I have received no response back. I was again copied on it, but I would think if there was any accommodation, and the request was the parking that is directly along the fence line between Sacred Heart and Spectrum. It is their property for sure, but there's parking that is perpendicular to that fence that would be more than enough parking that there just wouldn't be any, there wouldn't be overflow if we had events. There wouldn't, it just would solve a lot of challenges that the neighbors are describing, but I don't think there's been any response.
Do you see this parking lot as being fully occupied?
I'm not going to comment on that, but you were out in the neighborhood and you can see what's going on there, but it's not mine to comment on. That's when Sacred Heart used the parking lot. That's not the current setup of the parking. And
if
I
you
believe
recall,
there's two tenants in there. One is a pharmacy and the other is Spectrum.
I just want to remind the board that you encouraged the residents to reach out to Benchmark/Spectrum to see if they could put some added pressure onto them to continue the conversation. So that likely came out as a result of your discussion.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. So with that, we will hold this, unless there's any other comments on this agenda item, we will hold this item for the February meeting
And-
when the board can vote on the resolution to forward to the town board.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more comment, or request, I guess, rather. Captain Persons, with those 17 new smiling officers that you guys have, perhaps maybe periodically, you might be able to, in the mornings, just check this area and just make sure that there are no students parking in front of the neighbors' driveways, just making sure that everything is by the book there. I think the neighbors would probably appreciate that.
Or even looking into that parent drop-off situation with the school
Yeah.
bus, because that really sounds like a safety issue.
Yeah, and making sure that they're not parked along that other side of the street.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, we will close item A of old business. We'll move to the next item that we have people signed in for, which is item number 1, Millersport Highway and Flint Road.
So item 1 on your agenda is in reference to the intersection of Flint Road, which is a local jurisdiction side street where it intersects with Millersport Highway. Millersport Highway is a state highway. And then you also have across the way, is that Flint as well? I can't remember. Yeah, that's Flint as well. So both legs going into this intersection are town-owned. Of course, the intersection is owned and maintained and is the jurisdiction of DOT. Yeah. And let me pull up the information. The resident, Mr. Longo, reached out and he asked for a number of items to improve the safety, specific to vehicular traffic. He asked that there be consideration to lower the speed limit on Millersport. In addition, he asked for a strobing red light at the intersection. He further requested rumble strips and a radar feedback sign. That is a sign that indicates motorists passing speeds. So what was provided in the package was an understanding of what the crash information is. Being a state intersection that's heavily traveled, there is a good number of vehicle crashes reported. We did not dive into all 68 crashes. We can only tell you that 18 resulted in injury, at least in the limits indicated in the square. Furthermore, I don't think I provided this, but strobe lights are not allowed within the MUTCD per this section 4D.0603. Strobes shall not be used within or adjacent to any signal indication. And then lastly, we did provide you some volume to give you an understanding of how many vehicles are traveling through that intersection. This is a daily, annual average daily traffic. So as last recorded in 2015, there are 27,000 vehicles traveling on Millersport in both directions. Flint, same year, we had close to 10,000 vehicles traveling on Flint. With that, I'll pass it over to the board.
With that, we will open up public comment, and Alfredo Longo.
Good evening. My name is Alfredo Longo at 96 Brook Lane Drive, the adjacent neighborhood to that area. Not much more to add. I just want to thank Mr. Schriegel for responding to my email so expeditiously back in December, which was within 2 hours of when I sent it. So wasn't expecting that. I do greatly appreciate that. Not to elaborate more on the email that I sent out that you have in front of you, but my observation, and I'm an engineer, so I deal in data and facts, so observations are just what they are. But I observed over 3 accidents myself. One was about 2 minutes apart from when I walked through that intersection and ended up in a rollover shortly after I passed through there. The data, I think, speaks for itself. It has quite a few crashes, and being a father of 2, as I raise my kids, I've told them to just pause an extra 3 to 5 seconds before proceeding through that intersection and give yourself a little bit more time to ensure that cars are actually stopping. I myself do the same thing, and when I go through that intersection, I wait 5 seconds, and you see people blow right by that. They are traveling at a high rate of speed. They're coming off the 290, off that exit ramp. They're traveling down Millersport Highway, treating it as a highway. I'm going to assume, and I don't like to make assumptions, but at high rates of speed over 50, 55 miles an hour. So that's really what I wanted to see is just, or wanted to bring to you as a committee is, you know, I'm concerned about the intersection, having lived there since 2007. And I would just like to hear a little bit more of what can be done. I already appreciate the feedback of the strobe light not being applicable. But again, I'm just a resident. I don't know the rules and what can and can't be done. So I just would like to hear like what can be done. Is it really a concern, or am I just perceiving something that isn't? So with that, thank you, and I'm willing to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience to speak on this item this evening? None being seen or heard, we will close the public comment period. Open it up to the board. I'll just start off here to let you know that this is as Chris stated, this is a New York State DOT-controlled intersection. We don't have jurisdiction over the intersection to make any changes or enhancements. We can refer stuff over to New York State DOT in a letter, asking them to review the intersection and ideas. We may get a response back. We may not get a response back. All depends on when they look at it and how they feel about it. So with that, we'll just have some things to talk about here. Yes, this intersection has come before us before. That obviously has an accident history to it. There are issues and concerns there. One of the things that comes to my mind right away, Chris, is obviously we will refer this to New York State DOT for further consideration to consider safety enhancements at the intersection for both pedestrians and vehicles based on the accident history. I would ask if they would be able to replace the span wire signals and install, what are they, mast arms signals that would allow for the high visibility signal backers to be put on, like they just did at Transit in Genesee with the reconstruction of that intersection. That would definitely increase the visibility of the signals at that intersection. I don't know if open up others as well for comments there, others ideas.
Just my thoughts on this. I do generally agree with the resident that this intersection is, it's not one I would want to cross. I obviously don't live in that intersection, but I would not want to cross the street here personally. The rate of speeds are very, very high in this area, especially with the fact that there are no, with the Cloverfield design, it's meant to keep cars moving. So generally cars are moving very fast there, and I think probably 55 miles per hour is a reasonable estimate, which obviously if you were crossing and you got hit at 55, you're probably not alive. So I do think that we should refer it. Maybe retiming the signal might be worthwhile, just to kind of add a delay for the, between when one direction is able to go versus when the opposite street is able to go, or even for when the pedestrian, the ped heads activate. I think something like that might be worth considering. I think leading pedestrian intervals might be worth considering here as well. Just to, again, give a little bit more preference to pedestrians in this area, where essentially the ped heads would go live about 3-4 seconds before the actual green light would go for the drivers. And then the last thing I might consider, and I'm not sure how it would work in this intersection in particular based on its current design, but perhaps some sort of median in the middle of the road. It doesn't have to be like a full median, but even just a median at the intersection to provide some sort of refuge.
I was gonna mention that as well. Sure. If we actually look further up Millersport Highway at the next intersection where there is a signal, that was what I was going to suggest as well. If there would be a way to put in a center median at the intersection, allowing for a center refuge for pedestrians crossing.
And then the last thing on my list of possible ideas, and again, I don't know if any of these the state would be really, amenable to, but just things I think would probably be worth considering. I wouldn't be opposed to rumble strips in that area for people coming, north off of that exit. It's mainly a commercial area. I know there are apartments right there, so the students who live in those apartments might not like it. But other than that, it's pretty much a commercial area. And then I also wouldn't be opposed to a radar sign for when people come off that ramp that just says, "Hey, your speed limit is now 45," and just alerts them to something to more call out the speed that it has gone from 65 to 45. I think might be worth considering.
I'm gonna throw one more thing out for consideration, which I know is probably crazy, and I don't know if anybody else on the board would agree, but explore the corridor even further for consistency and go down to Sheridan and Millersport, which is another intersection that has turning delays and other than that, I'm gonna say it, but I'm gonna regret saying it. What about a roundabout at this intersection and the other one? It'd be 2 roundabouts in the same vicinity, traffic flow change. I just don't know traffic counts on those streets if it would be way over capacity to support roundabouts.
I think that the volumes on these are way too high for a roundabout personally. It would slow them down for sure, but I think that it would also cause significant, it's my opinion and my impression that medium volume streets for traffic are more appropriate for roundabouts. So I don't necessarily know if I would be in favor of that, because I think the only roundabout that would be feasible is a multi-lane roundabout, and I think that those are the types of roundabouts that make people hate roundabouts. So those are my thoughts on
Well,
that.
Sheridan would have to be multi-lane for sure.
Yes.
But I don't think you could put one there by itself, because it would be, there are other ones that are around the University of Buffalo, so the students around UB are familiar with them from the other areas of campus where they exist. I'm just not sure vehicle capacity on Millersport Highway going into the roundabout. But it's something that,
Yeah.
we're throwing ideas to DOT.
I think I'd probably be more amenable to one happening at this intersection as opposed to Sheridan and Millersport. But even then, I think the volumes might be too high on this.
So I would put one at the other intersection too that we looked at.
Yeah.
Millersport and,
I'm thinking there's gonna be a problem with people coming back down towards Sheridan, because you're coming off that hill and you've got speed. And that might be, you might come into that roundabout just a little too hot. I think that might be a problem.
okay, I was just throwing it out there.
I mean, I was actually thinking about that, but just as I was listening to this initial, thinking, yeah, there's enough area there, it's big enough. I would think it'd have to be multi-lane, certainly on the Millersport end of it, because that's a lot of traffic, 27,000 cars, that's a lot of traffic. And like Greg says, the two-lane roundabouts are the kind of roundabouts that make you hate roundabouts. I mean, I'm thinking Gates Circle here, and something on that scale.
I would also question, what is the actual pedestrian counts at that intersection based on the traffic counts? Would it warrant DOT considering a pedestrian bridge over the intersection?
You know what? I looked at the intersection this weekend with a friend, and we actually considered that. We thought, is this pedestrian bridge worthwhile? But that's very expensive. Because, may I ask the resident a question?
Sure.
You live there. What is the nature of the pedestrian traffic? There's student housing there, correct, for UB? Is there much neighborhood traffic, kids crossing, doing stuff? Because where are the kids going to go, to the Marriott?
Yeah, my observation is most of the people that cross there are the students that are going to UB.
Right, okay.
And there's a little bit of people going to like, the pizzeria place or whatever across the street, but that's not a lot. I think most of them are students.
Is there any bicycle traffic, or people going to the pizzeria, for instance?
Some, not a ton. Now, bringing that up, I don't know if it was a rumor, if it was brought up years before, but I think the apartment complex was approached once before about assisting putting in a bridge there. But I don't know how far back it was. I think one of the residents told me that.
Because, I mean, driving the neighborhood, there's that little section of student housing there.
Yep.
And then it's residential, it's houses, and that's not students.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're accommodating a group of residents there in those apartment complexes.
For pedestrian traffic, the
pedestrian
majority of them are, yeah.
And I mean, it's a number of people, but it's not like a huge neighborhood's worth of people.
Yeah, and I don't know if many of the accidents were caused by pedestrians, although that is a concern. What I've witnessed is just vehicle-to-vehicle accidents.
I mean, I drive this intersection, my life carries me through this intersection 2 times a day. And my thing is merging off the 290, making this quick slip over to get out of Flint.
Yeah.
And that actually causes me to slow down, because you have to maneuver, you have to keep speed. It's a challenge, and but that's my thing, is getting over to Flint. But that's a whole other matter. I don't see many pedestrians, and when they are, I'm like, those people are taking their lives in their hands. I agree with you. There's a thing here.
Yeah.
Are there the blinking? Are there the lights that tell you how many seconds you got to cross?
Yes.
For there are those there. Okay.
Yeah, there's a system there. It's 30 seconds.
Okay. Could they make it 35? Is the question, or 40 even?
I'm a pedestrian that goes through there quite often because I'm a runner and I run up into UB, but usually when I pass through there, it's 5 o'clock in the morning and there's nobody around, but it's a little bit easier to navigate there at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, at 5 at night, it's a completely different matter. Trust me.
Kevin, there's a standard crossing calculation that DOT would do. It takes like the average speed per pedestrian. I think it's like 3.5 feet per second. And then the width of the road and the distance from the push button. There's all these different variables, but they would come up with that, and adding time to it is probably, unless there's a good reason, they wouldn't entertain that.
So, Chris, your accident data, does this show any pedestrian accidents?
I didn't dive deep into that to know that information. I do know within the past 10 years, there was a pedestrian fatality at this intersection. I believe alcohol played a role in that, but beyond that, I don't know the numbers. Whoops, there we go. Nope.
I mean, that's.
Sometimes they color code them.
It's
I
an
think
intersection, it's not
green
friendly
is-
to anybody.
I think green is injury, but pedestrians might have a color, but I don't remember.
Okay.
Well, I would certainly be in favor of writing a letter to the DOT and say, "Here's something you can look at here."
Yeah, so I believe all those are here this evening are in favor of a referral to DOT on the intersection for vehicular and pedestrian safety improvements.
I'm abstaining.
Jennifer is abstaining.
So here's what the letter says so far. Consideration for mast arms. What Greg was talking about for a longer red, that's called the red clearance time. So you would extend the red clearance time. Leading pedestrian. I think there's a term for that. Yeah, that's right.
Need the island for the pedestrians too.
I'm not done there, Dan. Island or median. Rumble strips going in the southbound direction off of the ramp.
Northbound, from
Oh,
that,
okay.
the ramp that goes north up towards that intersection. Essentially, right when they get off of
What would be the
that one right there.
What
Yep.
were the purposes of rumble strips?
Just to kind of like say, like, hey, you're not on the highway anymore.
Pavement's kind of rough in there
You
anyway.
do feel like when you get off there, it's engineered like you're kind of still on the highway. So that's kind of why I think that might be worthwhile. I don't know if it's the right ideal.
I'll just put both directions because this is coming downhill. I know it's more of a clover leaf, but
Yeah.
they can look at both.
And actually, rumble strips probably would make more sense on that part right up there going south too, because there's no houses in the immediate.
Right. Radar feedback sign. Do we have a direction on that or both directions?
I'm thinking coming south, because that's when you're hottest off that hill.
How would a radar feedback sign be effective with multiple lanes of traffic? Normally they're on single lane roads, aren't they?
Even just like one of those speed signs that just like blinks the speed limit instead of just says it regularly. I don't know if that would work.
You know.
But like something to draw attention that like you're not. It's especially coming off the highway.
Coming
It's
down
only
that-
from 65 to 45, and you have to slow down that 25.
So I'll say enhanced speed sign.
Something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, you know, it's a thing, coming down that hill going south, and you see the lights green, you're going. And if it suddenly turns yellow, it's like, whoa, you're still going.
Yeah, and that's what the residents said was and you kind of, sometimes people do race for it.
Because you got the high visibility of it, it's like, it becomes a bit of a, I don't want to say, it becomes a bit of a, shall we say, a challenge to make it.
And then maybe I'll just say open it up to modification of the intersection, including but not limited to a roundabout.
I think we were opposed to roundabout.
Okay.
I wouldn't put it in there.
Yeah, I don't think it'll work there personally.
I think it's gonna be messy.
The medians though, like a pedestrian median.
He had that in there.
Refuge.
Refuge
Sorry if I
median,
missed that.
A refuge median is a good idea.
refuge median for pedestrians. That would also choke down the intersection a little bit.
And you could say similar to the UBMD if you wanted to, the one on Millersport near UBMD.
Millersport and Coventry.
Yes, Coventry, yes. Just as an example.
There is
Okay,
sort of a median
now,
leading up to
did I
that.
miss anything?
Nope, I think you got him.
So, Mr. Longo, we're going to send a letter to DOT. We're going to throw a whole bunch of suggestions their way. They're going to do their own review regardless of what we suggest. Normally, they get back to me with a courtesy letter saying it's under investigation, and then they'll ultimately get back to me with the findings if they conduct their study. I will copy you on everything that goes out and received by the DOT. All right, you're welcome.
Thank you. With that, we don't have anybody else signed in this evening, so we will move to item number 2, 550 North Bailey Avenue. Difficulty turning out of the post office onto North Bailey Avenue. Our favorite neighborhood streets.
A lot of that's gonna change with all this new signalization going in with the Costco.
It's only gonna get harder.
Someone's gonna get hurt?
Harder.
The signals, if they're timed correctly, may make
Go
it
ahead,
easier.
Chris.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so on this one, resident explained they have difficulty pulling out of the USPS post office on North Bailey. This is located just north of Meyer. As seen on the screen, this is the movement they're talking about. This is a 3-lane local roadway. Gotten a lot of attention lately due to the upcoming Costco proposal. Let's see here. When we looked at accidents, there were no crashes related to left outs. We did review each one, given the small number of them, but there weren't any specific to the movement that they were referring to. We also looked at Bailey and Meyer, the actual MyoVision split trend data. And the reason, I think it's pretty clear to say that they're having difficulty pulling out is because the southbound traffic volumes are high and stack up in that direction. As you can see in this small box, there are a number of split failures and overall difficulty, coming through. Oddly enough, northbound and westbound are pretty open. A lot of spare capacity. We do have some turning movement counts specific to Bailey and Meyer, being a town signal. You can see on this turning movement diagram, going southbound, you've got a good probably closer to 8,000 vehicles per day. And that's all I've got.
We already know this area is under consideration for enhancements in the zone from construction related to the Costco development. Bailey is currently near capacity with the expectation that the development further down the road will put it at capacity and lead to potential widening of Bailey. I think that's all stuff that's being considered with that zone, correct, Chris, for the Costco development and mitigating funds? Everything else related
That's
to
correct. This is within an opportunity zone called the Boulevard Central District, where traffic has been looked at network-wide within that district, and it was identified that at some point, North Bailey will hit capacity, and there should be consideration for a 5-lane section in here.
So with that, I would move to receive and file based on the zone that it is in and it being a known problem. There's nothing we're going to be able to do to mitigate it at this point.
I'm not opposed to receiving and filing it. The one thing I think we should consider, and I don't know if it's possible for fire department reasons or if it's even something that would be acted on now, but I think maybe there's 2 entrances to the post office. Maybe we should consider closing one of those curb cuts just to further reduce conflict points on that roadway. I know it wouldn't make a huge difference, but it might be worth considering.
I think that the way that it operates, it's a enter and exit. People always go in the north one and always come out the south one.
Yeah.
Just because the postal collection boxes are on that side.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's signed that way, but that's
Yeah.
always the way it works every time. Oh, yeah, it is signed that way.
It just maybe in the future, maybe they should consider consolidating them. I don't know.
No, I think it's a bad idea. I think it works well as it is.
Okay.
I use this post office daily, and I think it works pretty much. It's the best.
And anytime I want to turn left out of there, there's courtesy people that let you out into that center lane, and then you just merge in. You just got to be patient. Yeah.
I was going to say,
You have to go north to go shopping.
and it's a post office, and we know the actions that it takes to make changes at a post office based on what's happened on Sheridan Drive. So
The hazard is the people coming north on Bailey. That's the hazard. They don't necessarily accommodate the people making that left. The ones coming back south, we'll often see the traffic backed up, and they'll let you cut in. The ones going north are the ones that you got to watch out for.
yeah,
But
But
you can
there's-
do it, you can do it, and again, it's a time of day thing.
Yeah. So,
Do it during the peak hours.
in favor to receive and file?
Yeah. Again, a lot's gonna change when you get the new signals in there.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Moving
just
to
no
item
point in
number
looking at
3,
it.
Evans Street, SJ Road, request for pedestrian improvements.
So we're at the intersection of Evans Street and SJ Road. I'll show you the intersection. It's International, SJ, oh, there we go. So this is in the boundary of the village of Williamsville, but we own and operate the intersection, signalized intersection. The village, to my knowledge, doesn't own any intersection or signalized intersections. So with that, we do have mile vision at this location. It was brought to my attention by DPW of the village of Williamsville that there's been some improvements made at this intersection specific to a sidewalk. Let me pull that up.
Thank you very much. Oh, they only own Drexel apartment. There's Georgetown apartments.
So we're looking, we're on the southeast corner looking northbound. And here's the new sidewalk. As you can tell, it's not in the aerial right here. So they brought it to the town's attention, hey, there's a new sidewalk there. Maybe it's worth a look to see if any additional improvements could be made for pedestrian safety and accommodations. This is not to be confused with the PSAP application that the town put in for an additional crossing across Evans. So the actual ask is for an enhanced crossing, something to accommodate the east leg now that the sidewalk is in.
Chris, I think that photo is ancient or something.
This?
The
No.
one you just had on there.
This one?
That crossbar is way up close to Evans.
No, I took this at the end of December.
I went through it today.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
This one coming across SJ. It's not like that. Well, we're gonna redo them anyway, right?
So I don't have any additional information beyond that, I don't believe. Well, I do have counts. I think I put them in your package. What I don't have is pedestrian counts. Mile vision, in order to count pedestrians, you have to have a crosswalk and a pedestrian zone identified. So I don't have any good indication on how many pedestrians are crossing other than, I think it's 2015 turning movement count that indicated that 16 were crossing, 2014, I'm sorry, during the AM peak and 0 at the midday and 0 at the PM. So I don't know what happened on that morning, but looks like there was significant traffic on that leg, pedestrian-wise, on that east leg. With that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
So no one's crossing Evans. A bunch of people are crossing SJ.
If you build it, they will come.
You've got two left turn lanes there. Okay. It's hard to decipher out of this picture, but you do.
Can you hit the microphone for the minutes there, Dan?
You have two right turn lanes there. Now, if you're a pedestrian walking north on that sidewalk coming down Evans, you've got a long distance to go across there, number one. And there's nothing to stop that traffic, really. It needs a red arrow.
What needs a red arrow?
The right turn onto SJ from Evans.
So you want a no right on red sign? Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's nothing to protect a pedestrian if he's crossing there, because they just come down and they turn right. Okay, there's no arrow there, no red arrow or anything like that in the signal.
Right.
What you've got.
Normally, we would place the no right on red type signage, not the signal itself.
Well, this intersection works like the one on Arrow Drive used to work. Everybody turns whenever they feel like. I use it all the time, so I observe it all the time.
Yeah, I would want to know if there were really pedestrians there to protect before putting up that sign.
Well, that's a very good question, because you asked me that, and I told you I can't ever remember seeing one, and then the next time I went out there was a pedestrian walking north, okay? But there was no traffic, so he wasn't in danger, but he could have been.
This guy's walking.
He was back on this leg over here.
All right, it seems to me the thing to do is get a pedestrian count. And then we'll see if there's a problem that needs addressing, I guess.
I kind of disagree. I mean, to Dan's point, I mean, with cars just turning right there without really paying attention, what I kind of think might be the best option, and I could be wrong here, but I think what might be a good option is to consider just adjusting our PSAP proposal to, instead of making another crosswalk for Evans, where we see some people crossing there, but not a lot. Instead of having 2 crosswalks for Evans, we just update it. We just change it so that essentially there's 2 crosswalks. One, the existing one, and then the one for crossing SJ. And then don't put a crosswalk right here, like right in the foreground here of this picture. Yeah, so essentially just change the PSAP proposal from here to there.
I mean, if it's just paint,
Just paint.
it doesn't need to be a PSAP. It could go right to the highway department.
Oh, so we could do both, one capital, one not.
We could refer this to highway to paint in the crosswalks, which would then allow the MyoVision signal to be programmed for the pedestrian zone to get pedestrian counts to then determine if additional build-outs with full ped heads would be necessary. But Dan brings up the challenge, if you put the pedestrian crosswalk in and you have a lane of traffic with a right lane uncontrolled, everybody just making the right turn, are we creating a problem for the pedestrian?
You could put in one of those yield to pedestrian signs.
That's true, yeah. And I think generally at least the visibility of pedestrians right there, if you're coming down and you're in that right-hand turn lane and you're going to take a right onto SJ, the visibility for any pedestrian walking in either direction right there is good. But I do agree that probably a yield to pedestrian sign would probably be appropriate.
Chris, if that is village property, is it town highway department to put the paint down, or refer back over to village to tell them to put the paint down and the ped heads would be ours?
It would be the town's responsibility.
Okay. Are we in favor of that, to refer to highway?
Is there any harm in it? And it would authorize the count, which would be ultimately what we need.
So
Yeah, I agree. And then you get the count and you find out if you need the ped heads or put in the ladder type crosswalk or restrict right turn movements, all that.
Okay.
Nothing's going to happen this winter anyways, so, all right.
we don't need to vote on it. It's referral to highway to lay paint, and then referral to Chris to reprogram MyoVision once the paint is down. Good on that, Chris?
Say that again.
So
Yeah.
we're referring to highway with the recommendation of installing the painted crosswalk? and then referral to you to program MyoVision once that's installed for pedestrian
I
count.
got it. That's correct.
With that, we'll close item 3, move to item number 4, North Forest JJ Audubon Parkway, request for southbound left turn arrow.
So the request is for an additional left turn arrow going in the southbound direction at the intersection of JJ Audubon and North Forest Road. This is a town town signal. North Forest is a county highway. JJ Audubon is a town highway up until about the bridge where it then turns into UB. So again, southbound, they're looking for a left turn arrow. So we looked at the criteria on the left phase worksheet and ran the numbers, and there was insufficient. There was enough delay, but there was insufficient opposing volumes to meet the criteria. We also reviewed video to count conflicts, and that didn't meet the conflict number as well. And we also pulled accidents to see if anything would be correctable in a 3-year period, and that wasn't met as well. So, per this criteria, it is not recommended for a left turn phase.
Thank you. So my only comments on this is that the issues with the intersection are the choke down and the width of the road. That the shoulder is currently used as, for the northbound traffic, the shoulder is currently used as a right turning lane because of its width, which conflicts with people making the lefts. The left-hand turning arrow isn't going to do anything on the other side because people will continue to make that movement, that really the whole intersection just needs to be choked down based on the choke down that was done with the bridge.
Is this one roundabout capable?
Probably.
There's much traffic volume there compared to some other roads.
Yeah, but there's going to be a whole development to the north.
Isn't the path of the train eventually
Yep.
would go right here in theory?
In theory. In my grandkids' lifetime.
You talk about the student development.
I said in my grandkids' lifetime.
Right?
No, this would be accurate.
Oh.
So with that, I would move to receive and file based on current road configurations and data that was provided to us.
Agreed.
Yes.
All in favor? All agree. Next item of business is ATSB meeting schedule change, just to make everybody on the board aware of the October 2nd meeting, when the dates were approved by the town board. That meeting was changed to October 9th because October 2nd is Rosh Hashanah. So the town board moved us to October 9th because of the holiday. Item number 6 is the election of officers. We cannot do that because we do not have enough members or we do not have a quorum to vote, so that will continue to be held. And everyone will maintain their acting positions. Any other new business to be brought before the board? None being heard, we'll close new business. Old business, we have already addressed item A. We will move to item B, Dodge and Hopkins request for northbound and eastbound left turn arrows.
A similar approach to the last item. We looked at the left turn criteria, just so you know what's cooking here at this intersection. This is a town intersection, although Hopkins and Dodge are both county highways. There are currently, if you look on your screen, designated left turn arrows for the westbound, southbound. A resident approached the town and asked for it to be on all legs, meaning the addition of the left turn arrow in the eastbound and the northbound. When doing the criteria, We looked at those same, oops. We looked at that same criteria. The delay met the minimum criteria of greater than 50 of 50 left-turning vehicles in the peak hours. We look at AM and PM. They were met. Then we look at opposing volumes. In order to do that, you take the southbound throughs and multiply them versus the northbound lefts, and then if it's greater than 50,000 for this says 4-lane or a highway, but it's actually a 2-lane. If you recall, the last one said 100,000, so that's just a typo. I'll have to fix that. So no, that was not met in either the AM or PM. Then we also look at conflicts. These are vehicles that are essentially trying to beat the light or cut in front of a vehicle that's going through while turning left. Total conflicts must be less than 14 in the peak hour. You had 16 in the AM, so it did meet it in the AM. I think that's the only one we looked at. I don't think we looked at PM. And then crashes, no, we didn't have correctable crashes totaling 4 in a 3-year period. I'm sorry, the crash report indicated. Yeah, I'm sorry, they asked for 5 or more, and we only had 4. We only had 4, and only 1 related to that northbound left. So again, we looked at it the other direction. It didn't meet the delay in the AM. It did meet it in the PM. Did not meet the opposing volumes. Did not meet the conflicts, and did not meet the crashes. So at this time, we are not suggesting additional left turns go in there. You don't have to listen to these sheets. They're just to provide you guidance. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
The data says what the data says, that it's not supported. We normally support the data, so my only concern is we're going to say no based on the data, and this will come before us again, because it comes before us all the time.
The data says what the data says.
Correct. We'll get new data the next time, see if it supports it. Receive and file, all in favor?
Aye.
Any other old business to bring before the board? Chris, I just have one question. Since we're on signals, left turn arrows, Young's and Klein, we had made reference to that to refer over to highway for installation. Is there any progress on that?
Actually working on it today, and Al and I had a conversation about it on the phone today as well. So no updates, but we're
So it is progressive. The
following
update
through
is
that it gets to highway.
the update is that it is progressing. There's continuing conversation. So thank you. Any other conversation? Any other old business items to discuss or bring back up for questions? None being heard, we will close old business. We will thank our liaisons for their attendance this evening, except for Tom, who gets to stay. Everybody else, thank you very much. And Chris, you get to stay too.
So Sean is in the meeting next door, right? Do you want to wait for him, or do you want to pull him, or we've got other site plans to review. It's up to you.
What's going on next door?
Okay.
Say village meeting?
We're going to do
Meet over here.
Mill Sheridan. So I've got the most recent site plan, and they put together a presentation deck.
How are you? How are you? 5105.
Slow start. Picked up as 5
not Taco Bell.
Greetings. I've got one more board member coming in. You got,
We did it anyway.
Did it anyway.
back? I think he went to the restroom. Sean. I think we're missing one board member, right?
Yeah, Kevin's in the back.
Yeah.
Technically, we can't vote.
He can't
Yeah,
vote,
oh,
so
yeah,
we can
yeah.
vote.
Well, if you want me to start, I can start. We need our slide advancer. We can't go without him.
Come on, I was expecting comments from you.
You're good. You're the project manager on the roundabout.
Under current construction, I would have mass cable on intersection that size, correct? No?
All right, ready.
Ready, Chairman?
We are ready.
Good evening, board members. David Chiazza from Municipal Development Corp. Have Nick Dope with me, as well as Sean Hopkins. I apologize in advance, getting over a cold, so hopefully, if I have to excuse myself, I got to hack up a lung. That part. Hopefully, you'll give me a minute to do that. We're here to continue our conversation about tacos, coffee, and traffic. We'll just do a real brief presentation just to kind of bring us up to speed with where we were from our last visit last in December. Next slide, Chris. So just to familiarize yourself with the site again, I know you're familiar with it, but 5105 and 51 Sheridan Drive, that's our site. Yes, we do own the properties at 553 and 543 Mill. We've encroached upon 553 Mill for this project, but there is no opportunity to utilize those other two parcels for this project. Next slide, please. So we met here in December. We heard some good things. We heard some concerns and some comments. Some of the good things we heard was that this redevelopment of this corner will greatly clean it up. That connecting 5117 and 5105 is probably a good thing because they're currently disconnected. And that there's sufficient stacking for each of the drive-throughs to eliminate the risk of backup on the public thoroughfares, as happens in nearby coffee shop locations. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Next slide, please. Some of the comments and concerns that we heard, that the Sheridan driveway may present internal vehicular conflicts, that the limited access Mill Street driveway may inhibit northbound exiting vehicles and perhaps a full access driveway would be preferred. If we stuck with a right-in, right-out or limited access driveway, the recommendation was that we consider yellow lining the right-in, right-out to more clearly designate that the two lanes and how they go off in each direction. And then straighten the crosswalk from the Mill Street driveway to the patio. And there's a concern raised about left-hand AM peak turns onto Sheridan Drive from the Sheridan driveway at our site. There were two responses to these, responses to the comments from the ATSB. One was a letter from Passero, our traffic engineer, Amy Dake, and one letter from us. I'll go to our letter first. Our letter is very simple, just reasserted or emphasized that the 553 and 543 Mill Street parcels can't be utilized for the product. They've been committed to residential use for the foreseeable future, so we can't really incorporate them into the project. Amy Dake and Sarah went into a more lengthier response to the various comments. I'm just summarizing them here. She affirmed, in her opinion, the suitability of the Sheridan driveway as it relates to our internal circulation. She affirmed the desirability of the full access Mill Street driveway suggestion by the ATSB. She also stated that if it's full access, there's no need to stripe, obviously, the right-in, right-out access driveway because it won't be there anymore. And she noted that the Mill Street crosswalk really can't be straightened because if you did that, it would take you right into a railing that would be at the patio. That would be a direct line, but that the skewed shape or the skewed direction of the crosswalk takes you directly to the entrance of the coffee shop. And then regarding the concern for left-hand turns out of the Sheridan driveway, I'm paraphrasing what was a longer explanation. Basically said that the queuing clears, basically there's three cars in that, in the cited example, there's three cars in that peak hour, and each signal, a green signal, it clears the queue so that those three cars can make that exit. That was that. Also in between, next slide please. Also in between, so this is the revised site plan that was submitted that shows the full access driveway. There's another, if you go to the next slide, it shows a little closer view of that. The other thing I just wanted to note there, because I couldn't remember if we noted it previously, we did pull the curb line of the exiting drive-through from the Starbucks, I'm sorry, I slipped it again, of the coffee shop back about 20 feet so that cars exiting that drive-through can more easily maneuver and make right-hand turns out of that drive-through to navigate the rest of the site. Next slide, please. So in between our last meeting with you, the town did receive comments from New York State DOT. It was an email with a very brief email, actually, about 5 or 6 comments in it, and a request that Passero rerun the synchro analysis with some recommendations. Next slide, please. Oh, I'll just go there. I'm sorry. So one of the comments was to locate the Sheridan entrance as far east as possible. They raised a similar concern that there's internal configuration of the Sheridan Drive entrance but created several potential conflict points. They just made a statement that they would not be altering signal timing at Mill and Sheridan intersection. They asked that the future development of 553 and 543 Mill, I know there's a typo in there, be included in the TIS. That the Mill Street entrance should be located at the entrance to the future Mill Street development. And then, as I mentioned, the request for the rerun of the synchro files. Next slide, please. So we responded to that letter on January 2nd. In addition, Amy Dake from Passero responded with respect to the synchro analysis earlier this week. Next slide, please, Chris. So in our letter, once again, paraphrasing much a longer letter, we stated that the Sheridan driveway is located as far east as we think we could possibly be located. To locate it further east would place it directly in front of the Muddy Taco, which we think actually creates other problems other than the one that's trying to be solved. I also think we wanted to point out to them or just remind them that the Muddy Taco is not open during the peak AM hour of the coffee shop. Therefore, some of the congestion that the site plan seems to suggest, because there's cars everywhere, and that site plan wouldn't really exist during the AM peak hour because the Muddy Taco is not even open during that time. We also made the point that A.B. Dake had made that the customers for each of the retailers are, a very high percentage of them are repeat customers and very quickly become very familiar with the site and how to navigate the site during the times that they frequently go there. The Mill Street driveway, which would presumably be full service now, will provide some much needed relief to the Sheridan driveway during peak hours. And that, as I mentioned earlier, that we've cut the drive-through curb back 20 feet to improve maneuverability for vehicles exiting the coffee shop drive-through, and that the inbound lanes from Sheridan will be clearly striped with directional and posted signage. Next slide, please. The other points we made in our letter responding to DOT were that we're not anticipating, nor did Passero anticipate, that any signal timing would need to be adjusted. So we acknowledged their statement that they weren't going to be changing it, but we also stated that we weren't seeking any changes to signal timing. We also confirmed for them that the original TIS prepared for the project did consider full build-out of the site, including the 2 parcels on 543 and 553 Mill. However, that there is no opportunity today to incorporate those parcels into the project. And then we concluded by, once again, stating what we all know and recognized last we were here, is that one of the significant benefits of this location and this site is the fact that it results in minimal risk of spillover of traffic into, of queuing back into Sheridan Drive or Mill Street. The Passero response on the synchro analysis, basically that they adjusted the analysis and the levels of service did not change from the prior analysis, even with the adjustments that DOT had asked to be made. So with that, that kind of catches us up. We're here to answer questions, continue our conversation, wherever you'd like to take it. Oh, I should mention, we do have a conference call with DOT tomorrow as a follow-up to their comments and our responses. So I know the town is going to be represented on the call with the developer and our engineers, so there may be more feedback to provide once that call is concluded.
You got nothing? I'm sorry?
Well, it seems that the state's, they're concerned about what's going on with the two properties to the south, what, 553 and 543? They're just looking to the future, because at some point you guys are gonna do something with those properties? Or not?
Well, I don't know how to be more honest and sincere than to say that we have no plans to redevelop those properties at any time in the near future. If they were a part of the project today, certainly we could have incorporated it into the project, but there's a number of reasons for that. One is we committed to the supervisor of the town board that we weren't going to do that. We have elderly residents that stay in the property at 553 Mill, so we did not want to see them, and he did not see them removed from occupancy. And secondly, the value of those two parcels is close to $1 million, so the project simply doesn't support us doing that project today and then putting a driveway in there. Another $1 million on the project just is not supported by that. So there really is no intention, and never was an intention to include it. We bought the house at 553 primarily so we could encroach upon it and accomplish what we have accomplished with the site. Did you want to
And
say
it's
something?
also important to note, those two houses, the town specifically asked us to include them in the rezoning. We were not proposing they would be proposed for redevelopment. As part of that, because it's the town's new mixed-use districts created in 2019, they made us show at least something that could occur there. We'd never advanced any idea that we were interested in doing that anytime in the near future. And if we ever do that, obviously it's a whole separate application that comes back through the process.
But as we explained to DOT that, and I don't know what information DOT had other than our application, so hopefully the conversation and our letter will have added some color to the application that they've received. But obviously, if you come in, if this project is built the way it is, and you came in later on to build an apartment building where those two houses are, it'd be awfully difficult then to kind of tear up that property, tear up the drive-through that's working, and then somehow bring a road in there, change all the access points once those two businesses are operating there. So I think what we're looking at, what we're asking this board to look at, we're asking the planning board and ZBA to look at is, this is the plan we're presenting, and other than the encroachments on 553 Mill Street, please don't consider the other two properties as part of the project. They just can't be.
Overall, I think this is as well designed as it can be. The one last thing I would consider you guys thinking about, and I apologize for not mentioning it last time, I should have, would be to maybe consider adding a crosswalk kind of at where the do not enter, where you'd exit from the coffee retailer. Maybe add a crosswalk from there across to the essentially the landing on the other side. Just because if they're, especially if you guys plan on putting like a 16-unit apartment building, I saw that somewhere in your old. Yeah. I'll point it out. Essentially just adding like a ramp and a crosswalk right here and maybe moving this back a little bit here. Because if you guys do eventually build this out as like a apartment building, I saw it in your sketch, you had like essentially a sidewalk connecting up to here.
Right.
So essentially if you had people living in here who wanted to walk to Mighty Taco, then they could have a safe crossing here. And also if there are employees at the Mighty Taco who want to go get a coffee, they don't have to walk across essentially an unprotected, drive.
That's a good suggestion. That's a good suggestion. Anything else?
Has the county said anything about the reconfigured driveway there?
They've not specifically commented yet.
They will be on the call. They'll be on the call tomorrow, so we may hear from them tomorrow unless you heard something.
So this was the second iteration of their plans with the full access driveway.
Right.
We sent that back to the county. They have not given us a response back yet, but they will be on the call with us tomorrow, so.
Yeah, the planning department has provided them, DOT and the county, with copies of everything we've submitted.
Chris, is that the proximity of that driveway to the intersection? Is there enough distance there?
I can only tell you what Passero indicated in their TIS, and that does not indicate an issue, according to their professional opinion.
Yeah, I think I got the data here if I can read it, but apparently at the 50 percentile of stacking, 12% of the cars exiting the site would be overlapped by the queuing of the left-hand shared and drive lane. That 12% accounts for 3 vehicles. And at every green signal, the lane clears so those 3 vehicles have time to exit. That was the statement that was made in the Passero letter. I think I've stated that correctly. That's correct.
I'm very pleased about the driveway change on Mill. I didn't like that right in, right out. They never work anywhere in the town.
It also improves pedestrian access, which was one of your concerns.
That recommendation from this board was worth every penny. We paid for it. Okay.
I'm in.
Good. It was a good recommendation.
The internal site plan is, I think, as good as it can be based on the parcel of property, but I would default any approvals to based upon your meetings tomorrow with DOT and the county as to the curb cuts, because we don't have say on those, so that will be the determining factor of where they say they need to be and what they approve and how that affects your site plan.
Understood, Chairman Frost. I understand.
But I too am in favor of the all access on mill.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
That's good.
You guys have anything else, or?
Will you be tabling or recommending, or what are you doing tonight?
We are short members. We don't have 6 for the quorum. You were not here at the beginning of that. The town board hasn't made the appointments to this board yet, so we only have 5 members. We have
One who
meeting-
has to recuse herself.
We only have 5 active members on the board at this time. We have 2 members up here who are acting members at this point, with the assumption they'll be appointed at the January 22nd meeting.
Okay.
So we need 6 to actually take a board, but actually we need 5 to review the site plans, which we have those 5 here this evening. We are, as we said, in favor of the internal site plans pending DOT and county approval on the curb cuts. That's where it would stand with this board at this time.
Okay.
Only because we're trying to keep this process moving, and I welcome Chris and Tom's input here. If our meeting with DOT, the town, and the county goes well, would we necessarily have to come back? Or would, in that case, Chris be in a position that he could issue a memo that allows us to proceed with site plan approval?
I would say if the curb cuts don't change to alter the interior work on the plan, I think we're good, correct, Chris?
That's correct.
Subject to the one comment that we had about considering the pedestrian connection. Okay, perfect, that's all. Thank you.
If the curb cuts are changed by DOT in New York State, I'm
Right,
sure
we understand.
that changes the whole site plan.
We'll be coming back, right?
Oh, yeah. That's big.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for this. And everyone have a great evening.
Yep, thank you.
So Sean, we can hit the Mosey next, if you'd like.
What did you say?
We can hit the Mosey next. Aren't you representing the Mosey?
No.
Oh, you're not?
I was not at, no.
Oh, apologize. Okay. Thought you were representing them.
I went for the ZBA, but I wasn't involved.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I would table that,
Do you
Chris.
have any other items before them?
I don't.
Okay.
Somebody else that does your work? Have a good evening.
I don't.
Everything that comes before us. Didn't know there was anybody else here. Yeah.
Chris, could you just pull up the aerial for the Mosey?
She can't comment on the curb cut. The internal work is fine.
Okay, so a couple months ago, we received an application for an area variance for the Mosey to enclose the corner of the building that right now is hooked, the restaurant. They are seeking to retrofit the space to add a new tenant, which includes them attempting to enclose the corner with glass to create a larger interior space. They felt that the entrance was, I'll say, unhospitable for tenants and was resulting in a negative consequence for the people that they tried to entice to go to the restaurant. So that being said, they needed to seek relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals in order to enclose the patio because that area of the building is in the clear vision triangle, which is nested in our zoning ordinance. So in November, they went before the ZBA to discuss the possibility of enclosing the space with glass. The ZBA did not feel comfortable acting. Instead, they requested that a representative from Passero, by the name of David Cruz, you might recognize his name from some of the traffic studies, they requested that he attend the ZBA meeting in December to speak on it. He was there. He gave a testimony to the ZBA on basically how the enclosure would not create a conflict or obstruct the vision of vehicles in the intersection. The ZBA felt that that was adequate, and they acted to approve the variance to allow the enclosure into the clear vision triangle with a number of conditions. One of those being that there be no window treatments permitted, that the glass not be tinted in any way, and then I believe there was one more, but I can't necessarily recall
Transparent,
it.
no glare, and no obstructions, like Christmas trees or.
Yeah, nothing interior obstructing, I don't even know what you would put in front of the windows except for tables and people. So those were the conditions placed on the approval by the ZBA. And that is kind of the scope of the project. I have the elevation drawings in paper if you'd like to see them. But it is, a pretty standard glass enclosure. There probably is a rendering in that packet somewhere. Yeah, those are the elevation drawings when they pop up.
Yeah, it's.
Same building footprint, just the enclosure of the side with glass panels.
So Tom, is it meant to be essentially is this going to be an eating area or more of an entrance lobby?
It's going to be a functional area of their tenant. They're getting Steelbound Brewing from Ellicottville. They are opening a location here. So I imagine there might be some bar tables, maybe, the surface that sticks out kind of like a chair rail that people can put drinks on and those type of furnishings. Other than that, maybe some seats, some sit-down tables for people, but nothing further than that.
And this would be the primary entrance?
Yes. Yep.
So everyone's been provided the information, including my memorandum to the ZBA on my opinion. Don't let that impact what you guys come up with tonight, but you have all the information you need. They did go through the highway design manual. It's very similar to what we just did on Maynard. It's the exact same thing, actually, on how to figure out the site triangles and the stopping distance as well as the site distance. So what they pointed out was, in this case D, intersections with traffic signal control, which this is, you don't utilize that typical type of calculation. Rather, it points and says the first vehicle stopped on one approach should be viewable by the first vehicle stopped on all others. So they are, per the book, achieving that. I pushed back per my memo and pointed to an FHWA documentation that said, okay, well, what if the power goes out? We try to obtain in a no power situation the ability for people to view as if it were a single stop approach. So they responded with there's technology there that allows that signal when the power kicks back on, that it goes on an automatic flash operating as an always stop, in which case then you kick back to this case E, which is intersections with always stop control. And again, similarly, first vehicle stopped on one approach should be viewable by all others. So that site distance does not apply. So you do have all the information, but we do need your recommendation on how to proceed. It is currently not going before the planning board. It is a minor site plan approval.
Yeah, so all administrative. We're done with our review, and the other departments are done with their reviews. They have a clean bill of health, except for your review tonight. So that's what I'm not asking for. I am asking for it because it's my project. I'm not part of them, so we are not asking for it.
So we're clear. If we say, yes, this has the clean bill of health is.
Yeah.
If we say no, then what happens?
It depends on what you say.
Ultimately, the planning board is kind of the deciding, said that they're on the planning department.
So
It's
we
ultimately the
can-
ones that decide based on whatever the comment is.
Your recommendation, or, I mean, it's going to get passed along to the petitioner either way. They can, respond to us and say, we're not willing to do that. And there's, it depends on how hard we want to push for it, depending on what it is. Or I can just usurp your recommendation and say, thanks for your input. See you later.
What's the planning department's opinion right now?
They have no other site plan changes except for encroaching into the clear vision triangle, which was basically waived at the zoning board of appeals. So we have no other comments.
You're not opposed to this, is what you're
No.
Well,
There's a similar situation a couple blocks from here. If you get on to Los Robos and you're on Los Robos and you want to turn right onto Main, you end up having to look through the windows to see if there's pedestrians coming. Okay, I can see the same thing happening here. We're talking about cars, but you got to think about walkers and bikes too.
So Dan, do you like that or you don't like that?
Big pardon?
Do you like that or do you not? Does seeing through the windows meet your?
No,
Okay.
no, I
Wasn't clear.
we've had complaints about it, and I know exactly what the problem is there, and it's I think it's a tighter intersection at Los Robos than it is
I would
here.
think the Los Robos one's a little bit tighter. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and
Yeah, I
it's-
would think so, yeah.
I like to know where pedestrians are. I don't like
to know where
to
Los
get
Robos
surprised at them jumping out at me.
It's the corner, yeah, that one right there, Chris.
It's the jewelry shop. Yeah.
Thank you, Craig.
I want to say do they have glass on it? Oh, yeah, they do.
Yeah, that's it right
Yeah,
there.
so similar situation. The only thing I will say is that with the Mosey, the glass is further down the wall on the side street. So it might provide a little bit more, whereas in this instance, it looks like you'd have to be right up to the intersection in order to even get to the glass. On North Forest, the glass would continue further down the building wall. Might help.
Notice, no turn on red here. Now, you can turn up here at the most.
Yeah, yes.
And it's got arrows too.
Yep.
That's a good point. That might be worth considering. The no turn on red, just doing the same exact thing if we allow this.
Yeah, because when you're turning red, you're looking left when you're pulled there. And yeah, you might glance over to the right, but given the limited amount of sight distance you have, you might not see an approaching pedestrian or a cyclist on the sidewalk. So preventing them, I know we have some issues with the Starbucks at that corner.
Yes.
And getting more vehicles out of that intersection, the better. So that kind of, my only hesitation on a no turn on red.
And in this situation, I mean, that's clear glass, but you can clearly see the reflection of the crosswalk in it. So even though it's, translucent, there's still going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Like on a sunny day.
and also, what's to stop, creep? Year by year, this table moves further, this table moves further, they're gonna creep.
I think, yeah, and putting the tables out there, it's going to be exactly like how it is right now. It's like a patio with tables.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just it's a piece of glass. I'm cool with it. Magic thing about glass, you can see through it.
And there is currently a stop bar right here in front of this car in this picture, is that correct?
Yeah, I think this first picture is him at the stop bar and this is him creeping.
And the intersection is also a little bit different there for the pedestrian, the way it kicks them out.
A little bit wider, yeah.
That's a good intersection. It works well.
There's an intersection that works well on Main Street.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Smart people turn off and get off on Main Street. They turn left.
I do like Dan's idea about the no turn on red.
I don't.
But I've never gone to
just-
that Starbucks, so I don't know how
just
big of an issue.
Don't, I'll give you a hint, don't.
Don't go to it. I do think it. I don't
Nobody,
know.
if you can put it up, but nobody's going to follow it pulling out of Starbucks going through there in the morning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're probably gonna
You're
get
going to create a
an
back.
argument from the neighbors if you try to put that no turn on red. Because you gotta, a good DOT signal there.
Yeah, is it, Chris, is it North Forest in that stretch of county road? Or is that a local road?
That's state.
It's, Dan's right. No matter what that is, the state takes jurisdiction over that
Right,
intersection
the functional
signage.
area, yeah.
I don't have an objection. Glass? Yeah, I don't either. Got my approval.
I understand the concerns about the power, but don't majority of the intersections have battery backup generators? Well, that's a DOT intersection.
I don't know.
No, they don't have battery. No, we have generator transfer switches at a lot of the town-owned ones, but I'm not sure of the DOT if they're outfitted with that. But yeah, for the very few times that happens.
So this hasn't gone to DOT yet?
No, it's not within the right of way, doesn't require a DOT work permit, so they don't have any.
Any other comments? Or so the 5 that can vote?
Does matter?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys are all in agreement, I can do an administrative review and send it up.
Perfect.
So Chairman's trying to figure out if you guys are all in agreement
Just
that.
making sure that the 5 that are here that can vote are, all 5 of us need to be.
I don't think that that's right. I think that we need the minimum number of people to hit a quorum, and once the quorum is met, a majority vote goes.
But for site plans, there, then it's bylaws say we need 5.
Got it.
Rest of the agenda, we need 6 people to vote.
Anymore.
We need 5 to review and approve site plans.
Okay. Got one.
Chris and I talked about that this morning. We can do site plans. So if all 5 of us are okay with the.
I'm not opposed.
Is my no turn on red included in this?
That's ultimately a state decision, so it's not up to this board to recommend that.
Nobody else liked it. I didn't mind. I've never been to that Starbucks, so I don't know how much of it has.
If you want to punch your steering wheel multiple times, I would suggest going there in the morning, yeah.
Yeah, you guys have made it clear. I trust you.
Okay, then we're good, Chris, with administratively approving it.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on.
Yeah, we,
1401 Niagara Falls Boulevard, is that still on the table?
yeah, I haven't heard.
You know if that's on the website, Dan, or Dan? Tom? Okay.
Okay, so this is on the corner of Niagara Falls Boulevard and Moyer Road.
Which corner?
Niagara Falls Boulevard.
Okay. So, that's the Domino's is?
Yes.
And Rachel's is right.
Yeah, Domino's and Rachel's.
McDonald's is like.
We've seen this one before.
Here, but they have a driveway here.
We've seen this before.
Yes.
Better plan than we had before.
It is and it isn't. So prior, they had kind of a double row parking here. This was grass. And they didn't plan on making any improvements to this area here. What they've done is they've kind of L-shaped this parking lot, added a dumpster enclosure for these businesses. And they've also added a typical Benderson striped crosswalk instead of a sidewalk on both missing pieces. And they have this now odd-shaped curb line because they didn't want to modify this curb cut. So they've incorporated grass and a pedestrian connection in this area here, but then they've kind of shortchanged this on curb cuts and access. So I'll just tell you, because I recently reviewed this one. Normally, our department only has jurisdiction over Chapter 203 of Town Code, which is the zoning ordinance. Chapter 84 is building administration, which is the requirement for sidewalks to be installed on public wrote that in our letter, technically I can't enforce it, but we had to double down on this because this is just even worse than making no changes, in my opinion. So, I can't stomach this. It's weird, it's awkward, it's even worse than before, lazy. Right, to encourage crossing. This is, I mean, it's unacceptable. There's like 3 different curb cuts here.
And this is, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to pull out of here, but it's dangerous. You could barely even tell that this is raised.
Yeah,
I've like
so-
almost driven over this one time.
Because it's just blacktop, right?
Yeah.
So, this is, so, they kind of, you zoom in, Chris, on the north part. This, we said, do you really need these 3 stalls? They said no, and then they gave us, they kind of brought this over, and then gave us that weird curb line.
Do they need that drive there?
No, they don't, and it can be revoked at any time by the highway department.
We have a new highway supervisor, superintendent that can put his hammer down on first month of the job.
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
Revoke the curb cut.
I almost feel like they should do like angled parking here, close this curb cut, and have like a driveway that goes back to this.
Yeah, that's what, when we, so, normally, our department meets with a lot of the applicants prior to them even submitting anything, and that was the first thing about it. Is that, think about one access on each street. You have a way to get in from the boulevard, you can have kind of a fire escape lane down the side of the building, and then a curb cut wire. I guess it just makes more sense.
And honestly, one more, like even further, they own the Rachel's building too, and there's another curb cut right here for Rachel's.
I don't think they own the Rachel's.
They don't own that?
No, they don't.
But they have a cross-access agreement?
No, they don't, because we
Oh.
encourage that too, right here. It's kind of open, you can see on that.
Well, but right here, you can drive through.
Oh, yeah, right now. Yeah, so is it back here. So when they installed it, when they proposed this parking, we said provide cross access. And they basically said no.
Rachel's did or they did?
It could have been either one. Benderson usually is willing to do cross access.
Is this gonna stay with this design? It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, well, nothing's changing here, so this is, it's staying.
Oh.
And honestly, if,
Oh, yeah, I see.
I almost prefer this would stay, because I go to Rachel's all the time, and when I park here, and then when I pull out, instead of having to pull onto Niagara Falls Boulevard to take a right onto Meyer, I drive right here, and take a right onto Meyer. So personally, I don't know if it's anecdotal, but.
So you guys wanna close this?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Okay, we want sidewalk?
Yes.
And what are we doing in this mess? That's DOT, isn't it? Yeah. Talk about it.
One of those should
Close
be
it anyways.
closed. Yeah.
Close the whole.
Well, it's wide open right
Is there
now,
asphalt now?
Isn't it? So should I tell them to provide a single curb cut in compliance with the DOT curb cut specifications? Because that's gonna be a lot more narrower than this. Sure. So I don't care where they put it, but I'll just say consolidated. But if they're gonna do that, consolidate that, then you need to drive here. Because you're gonna have a car pulling into here, you can't make a left in because it's at the center median through there. Okay. So you have a car turning in, you have a car backing into it.
I would be, so what they're gonna say, I'll just give you a preview, is that they're not making any changes here, they're not gonna touch anything. I would rather them not even do this and leave it as is for now until they come in for this to me is worse than it is now. Because the more we keep letting them do this, the more they'll do it.
It's just like what's up just to the north there, that
Yep.
mess.
Yep, you're right. And they've been hanging on to that one for years. And they keep saying, well, the pedestrian route is provided. It's right there, it's striped, but that's not safe. And I don't want to keep encouraging that.
Well, maybe the projection, you just have sidewalk through.
Yeah,
keep the curb cuts as is.
absolutely.
Okay, that's what I like. Even if they don't touch the curb cuts, at least put sidewalk through.
Yeah.
Could be a concrete sidewalk.
Visual, yeah,
Yeah.
concrete.
That's what our town code is. You can't do this without planning board or county department approval. It's town board. So, okay, concrete, close. Yeah.
rest of
The
it was
preference
totally
would be an access road here, then back to here. Rather
Well,
than,
that's for them to figure out.
Yeah, that's it. Just tell them what's wrong with it. Just look at the issues.
The rest of it is, we were totally fine with.
who gets the entrance to the dumpster?
I believe, what is this now? This is mattress firm?
I thought it was empty.
I think it's empty.
I don't know. This person is giving physical space to it.
Do we know what that's gonna be?
I don't. I thought it was mattress firm, but maybe that was some other property.
Okay, anything else?
What else is in your box?
No, I'll make a report, depending on this one.
No, I want the rest of the box.
I don't feel good about this one.
Look at that.
It's coming back. It's coming down.
Yeah, I hope they just take another stab at it, but I'm not.
Well, that's why I go to adjust my rear windshield wiper after getting out of the car wash.
This is working out, which is kind of nice.
This is. The old nursery on Main Street next to Wendy's, 5226.
Again?
5228 Main.
What do they do now?
George's Sweet Corn.
George, yep, George's.
Thought we were done with this one.
The
Thought we were done with
Gleason's,
this.
but that's a different.
Thought we reviewed this one last time.
Every week we review this.
So,
Going to Tops.
you guys asked for cross access, they gave it to you. Chris had brought up providing some escape from this access drive. It doesn't look like they've done that.
When he asked them to line up, these were misaligned here, these stalls were misaligned with these.
Yeah, yeah. Why don't we get
Those are
that?
aligned now.
We put in that.
That island, yeah.
The only thing we didn't do is this.
Yeah. Because they're like right at their parking.
So is that, like, this person is backing into here, is pulling in here. This person's pulling in here. How do they back out of their spots to go that way?
So they said, this comment is acknowledged, the central parking area has been revised to align the parking stalls, allowing for pull-through traffic when spaces are not occupied. Given the dead end length is less than 150 feet, no turnaround is required by code. Also, the rear area of the parking lot where the vehicle will enter this lane is large enough to see all visible parking spaces prior to driving into the lane towards the building.
So you gotta either look, and if you didn't look, then you gotta put it in reverse. That's what they're saying.
So they're saying is you pull into here, you're gonna have to back down to go
And
out.
what they're referencing about code is Appendix D of the fire code. That doesn't apply for this. They were just using that to provide a response.
Yeah, to your point, normally you do something like this.
Right, so in
Yeah, who's the
essence,
parking spot?
these two spots.
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
But if they do that-
65, how many are there actually?
Probably 65.
Normally it says provide. Okay, oh, so they did it right exactly.
Yep.
Okay.
It would be nice if they could attach here, and then another, handicap patch here.
Oh, yeah. Yep, they made that the handicap. Well,
But then how do you get the wheelchair to the ramp? I don't know. That's asking too much.
They're trying to.
This
get
is
the
commercial on the first floor of the condos or something.
Yes.
Yep.
So the reason why they're at just the exact amount of stalls is because they're relying on this to provide overflow parking, which
Plenty of
So,
parking
I
there.
mean,
It's internal, it's gonna be their own problem.
Yeah, they're kind of back into those spots in the park.
I don't like that this agenda as to, parking accidents, that takes up our resources, so we're trying to avoid it when we can, but it's up to you guys. I mean,
If they're citing a section of fire code as their basis for why they're doing it that way, is it something to push back on?
No, because this meets fire code. What they're referencing in Appendix D is that streets longer than 150 feet in length have to have a turnaround for fire truck. They're claiming that this is shorter than 150 feet, and therefore there's no need for one. But that's not what you were asking, so.
They already have all this kind of like, the interconnected access agreement. I mean, would the planning department be willing to just say, hey, we'd rather you just get closed, don't do these things?
They would need a zoning.
Can't do it. Yeah, they either need a variance or an alternative parking analysis.
What do they do with cops?
Now, sure.
I don't know. Usually it's a license agreement for X amount of years.
One of our voting members just left.
Someone leaves.
So it might be like a 10-year term automatically for 5 years.
Nah.
Now they're administrative, now we're just providing.
There's always
Rest
compensation
for
clause.
administrative.
But you know what?
They got plenty of parking, as far as I'm concerned. Tops.
I'm okay with it, you guys are. I
Yeah.
mean, I love.
I don't like it,
I don't
but
love this project.
we got
This
this.
was our main focus was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
We got it.
Screwball
Let's take what we,
site.
yeah, yes.
What's gonna happen is the tenants are gonna have parking wars, that's what's gonna happen.
That's their problem. not
Yep.
ours.
And when the tenants move out, well, their condos are
That's
moving
their
out.
spirit.
Okay.
Fortunately, the camera's not on copy.
Okay, downstream sewer capacity report. Just kidding. Wrench Road.
Fun wasn't here to do a meeting.
French Road still exists.
So, I could imagine the last time you saw this project, the building was oriented this way, with parking along here. That has since changed. So the building is now oriented facing French Road. This is existing parking that you may not even be aware is there because this is right now a fence and dense vegetation. This road has been cleared of parking and is now just access. There's a new amenity space and sidewalk connections throughout. Great.
Amenity space.
Whatever you want it to be.
Fire pit?
You can put the beer pong table right about there, the keg goes right about there.
I vote an opaque glass enclosure. That's what you should do at the corner over there.
Couple TV torches.
Yeah.
Opaque glass.
Whose project is this?
This is.
It's all student housing up there, right?
Sutton Architecture and Colonial Hotel Development. So this is new. Yes. Don't like that. What are we doing? Don't like that. Yeah, we noticed that before.
Yeah, they're like trying to pass it off, but like it's already there.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, into a drive-through lane, basically.
It's not even on their site.
No.
Do they not? They don't own that?
I believe they do. I believe they own this whole thing. I would say just get rid of it.
Closer to.
That's gotta be another site.
Um, I don't think that would even require site plan approval. Any of the parking.
Now they're checking like this, might not be sufficient to get.
I would just say get rid of this
because, or maybe for the pier, because this is a hot box. So even if you stripe it across here, there's nothing moving here, you get anywhere. So it's better to just take this and move it here. But I mean, I don't see any reason that you need to go this way unless you want your people, which.
Where is
I
this?
think they're
trying to get people from here to go here. Like, is this gonna be a? No, it's just housing. Well, it's not like a clubhouse or anything.
No.
Where is this not box? Where is this?
That's right here. This is the Mighty Taco drive-through.
Okay.
That's a stop bar right there.
So where's it going?
Right.
What the heck is this?
That is a building that owns, and I don't even think occupies. Center for Future Studies or something?
That doesn't even mean anything.
Wait,
Never been in it? No.
They're just
Sir-
making terms of Center for Future Studies.
What is it?
What is what's the future study mean?
I see the mail,
think
I
about what
see the
you're
mail
gonna
truck every
study,
day
I
at the
mean-
mail, at 10 o'clock at the post office.
It's very heavy on, noteworthy too.
That lets you out.
Yeah, the problem.
Well, I
yeah,
mean,
the
I
problem
didn't
is
get
you
a chance to ask him about Santa. I was gonna actually ask, I see the guy every day at the post office, the mail guy. I was gonna ask him whether they could answer about Santa Claus. But I didn't get the chance.
And that's probably what goes on.
Funny.
They're probably bringing out some kind of grant money.
More?
Yeah. I don't know, just keep saving these all for you guys.
Yeah, for bucks. Appreciate your comments, guys.
Should see how the ones Chris doesn't bring to these meetings.
I guess, yeah, 'cause I don't know. They keep getting mixed up here. This is six corners. This is six corners, by the way.
Yes, I know. I am happy, and I actually left it off intentionally because I want to ask Chris what
Nothing about traffic.
clearance times will be updated.
You always bring up transit.
Nothing about a traffic circle yet, though.
That's the project I should turn out.
I mean, that intersection is right for it.
That they didn't mix that, and they moved down the center turn lane, and they.
Oh, close to the thruway,
Yeah.
Chris, yeah.
Oh,
that's what I want to do, different process.
So, this is an older one, where we're at Robin Ridge Road, Dodge Road. Remember this? So, we wanted a mid-block crosswalk with a rectangular flashing beacon. County agrees, we get it, but. But my problem is, it had no connectivity to this concrete sidewalk. So I just wanted to make sure you have an agreement to connect this to here, to the ramp, and then it connects, so it goes easily. It's kind of a.
Yeah. We should- that's
Is this a sign right here? Yeah.
It's gotta make sense, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we love it to have it connected to the trail, that was the whole point of it, there's a whole Robin Ridge.
I remember
walking
the-
trail.
Yeah, but they're just gonna have to walk on
Intersection
the
came
road.
to the board.
Sidewalk. But at least we'll get them to the white shoulder.
The project is big enough for more, I'm asking for that.
Yeah. Okay, otherwise we're looking.
The dog area.
Moving on. What are your thoughts on that?
Before I die, a roundabout needs to go in.
Before you die.
That was my mission for the for being on the board.
Edgar Long
What
Meadow.
do they say,
Village
You
Board.
know,
that's the
my
annual
favorite
letter?
intersection, the one that's literally
Is it
shaped
the
like a
annual
circle.
letter?
This is the, it's from New York DOT.
Yeah, annually.
It's essentially, they just responded about they're gonna move the stop bar back. Eggert Road when you're coming from the south, going north on Eggert. And you get.
Motion to adjourn. Wait, actually, we can't vote.
They're gonna move the stop bar.
That's for the people who live in Hager, the hell with them.
You can. This year.
Did he ever return? No, he never returned.